Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight, we're going to be chatting a little bit about winter fire. We are getting into the colder and damper months before winter rolls in here, so there are some challenges there we're going to talk about. And a little bit of a channel update, too, kind of with our Amazon stuff there. We had a little bit of difficulties, minor setback with some of our plans. And to sum that up, Amazon has basically, for all rights and purposes, shut our account down from being able to do anything other than purchase items, which is kind of interesting, and maybe some of you guys can shine some light on this. Maybe we're going out the wrong way, or maybe you guys want something else. But I guess let's handle each topic one at a time, Ben. Does that sound like the plan here?
That's probably the best method.
All right, so let's jump in for the bushcrafter side of this. Let's start with fire. So it is winter. Well, it's not winter. It's coming on to winter. Winter is coming, not to coin the phrase. Uh, but it's that time of year where it's going to be wet, it's going to be cold, things are going to stay damp for a long time. And we have talked about fire in the past and methods and stuff like that, but we just kind of want to bring to light that this time of year, you're really going to have to take a few special considerations when you go out into the woods when it comes to fire. Like we said, it's going to be damp, it's going to be wet, it's going to be a little harder to get going, it's going to be a little harder to stay going. These are all things you got to think about. So what's your thoughts, Ben?
Well, I think a big part of it is this probably more than almost any other time of year. To me, the fire can be harder to start because things tend to be wet. It is getting colder at nights, and like later on when winter comes and things freeze, things tend to stay a bit drier in the winter. But this time of year, it can be quite miserable out there at times, and we've always said, cold and wet is pretty well the worst. And not to say that the spring hasn't got similar difficulties. So just wanted to kind of get it out there that you may have to take some extra precautions, take a little extra time to get a good fire going. That was kind of my thought process right now. And it's like a lot of things. Like we tend to recommend taking a few things to help you out. This is the time where I definitely would maybe have a few tea lights or little fire starters in my kit, and make sure that when I'm gathering material, I'm going to get a little bit of extra dry material to use as a fire starter. That was sort of the gist of what I wanted to talk about. And I think we can talk individually about different things that we take. So what are some methods you take this time of year to sort of make it a little bit easier in that challenge?
So for me, I take two kind of fire starting / prolonging methods. One homemade, dryer lint in egg cartons with candle wax poured over top of them. I use that in my wood stove. We end up making a ton of them. You can use sawdust and some other stuff, but we just save all our dryer lint from the run of a year, which comes out to be a lot of dryer lint when you actually look at it. And we save our egg cartons. So this time of year, we jam a whole bunch of the lint in the top of the egg cartons. We use a double boiler and melt down some candles. Literally, I just go buy like the great big cheap ones. You melt two of those down, and you can make like 30, 40 fire starters pretty easily. You just break them up into the individual like egg cup, and then you just light the corner of that, and that'll stay burning for like a good 10, 15 minutes sometimes. Enough, like not big flames, not intense, but constant. Enough to get a fire going. And the other one that I really like is literally the store-bought fire starting sticks that are kind of like sawdust with wax built into them. I use those quite frequently too, just to cheat because they're pre-made. The bag keeps forever, so I can throw them in my bag just like, solid if I need them, they're there. They're a little less messy than the homemade versions, but once again, the homemade versions I make and have here. So just those are really my two go-tos, and it just depends if I have any of the fire starters made here at home, and I'm willing to sacrifice a handful of them to take into the woods, or if I got nothing here at home and I'm just looking for a quick fix. I mean, there's numerous other things in there you could do too, but those are my two go-tos.
Mine is the makeup remover pads soaked in wax, and I usually just grab like the 50 pack of tea lights, and I just melt those down. Similar idea, double boiler, take my time. But I also usually throw a few tea lights on because those things will last for a couple of hours. And like you say, like it's a little flame, but it's a constant flame. So if I put my loose brush and stuff over that, it'll tend to dry it out and get it going. And I really don't care if my candle burns out in starting the fire. It's something I know I can keep in sort of an intense heat on a little area for a long time. So I really do like those. I almost always have two or three tea lights in there as a backup. And when I'm in the woods, birch bark. If there's birch bark trees, there's usually birch bark laying around somewhere that you can pick up. I try not to personally pull it off of live trees, but if I see a down tree, it's fair game. I'll usually run a knife down the side and take off a couple of good sheets of it and keep that in around where I'm going to have a fire, or just throw a bit in my pack as I go. Uh, and if you just keep a little ahead of it and think about what you're going to be doing, you'll generally find that there's always a lot of good material out there. It's just gathering it up. And if you wait till you get to the site and it's already starting to get dark, because it's dark now by what, 5:30 at the
Oh
latest.
yeah, yeah. Like what? I was gonna say, what is it now? It's 8:30, obviously, but
Yeah.
it was dark, and especially in this time of year where there's a lot of cloud cover and stuff like that, seems like it comes even earlier.
Yeah.
But
So with those short days, and I mean they're only going to get shorter right up until December 21st. Uh, you really do need to take advantage of your time, because your day is so short and your night gets so much longer that it's really good to take advantage of the time you do have to gather that material and have it ready. Because if you wait till, I mean, in the summer, it's 8:30, 9 o'clock before it's dark. If you wait till you normally get ready for bed to start your fire, it's going to be pitch dark. Like it
hmm.
is. Uh, and I think that's why the fire is so much more important this time of year, is when you're out there. It does get so dark so early, but you're really not necessarily ready to go to bed at 5:30. You're going to be up, so you're going to run a fire a little bit longer. You're going to really want that heat and stuff. I mean, it is a huge part of this time of year trips, and so fire becomes much more of a thing. It's going to you need it to last longer, and you're going to need it for the heat and the light more than much of the rest of the year.
No, for sure. I mean, like you said, the days are shorter, so you need the light. Um, it's like I keep saying, it's that damp time of year. So without a fire, you always kind of get that dampness in your stuff. You get the dampness in your bones. Um, And when it comes to birch bark, something I just thought of is the other thing I do is I burn firewood here at home. So any of the birch bark that comes off that, I've actually been thrown into, if you can find them now, a Sobeys bag. And I just kind of keep that stuff full. And anytime I go into the woods, even during the summer, I generally grab a handful of that and throw in a Ziploc bag and throw in my backpack. I mean, do I use it there, or sorry, I leave it there as kind of my backup method. Try to do all my fire starting from the stuff around me and things like that, just to keep in practice. But at a certain point, you're just like, all right, I'm done. I just want a fire going. And birch bark really is kind of the one of the golden standards in fire starting, at least in Nova Scotia, because the oils and stuff in it, it burns pretty hot, burns rapidly, and I guess if you get it thick enough, it'll actually last a little bit of time too. If you shred it right down into its paper form, it goes up in a flash. But if you leave it in
Yeah,
like that thick kind of crusty stuff, and you get one of those going, that'll actually burn for long enough to get like your twigs and stuff going, and you know get
yeah,
going from there. And the other thing this time of year to keep in mind is if the outside of your wood and stuff is damp, you may be into a little bit of additional work to have to either split that down or baton it down or cut it down in any method that you want, whatever is your, whatever floats your boat there. Because a lot of the inner stuff is still going to be somewhat dry. You know what I mean? And then you can take that outer shell and set it around your fire and it'll dry out. I know in previous years, well, not anytime recently, but when I was really out a lot during this time of year, uh, your reflector wall. I would build a
yeah,
reflector wall for my campsite, and instead of using it as just a reflector wall, it was more of like a reflector wall or windbreak or whatever you want to call them. There's argument if it actually reflects heat or not, but that's a different discussion. But in any case, I would use it to to kind of dry out wood as I'm going, get semi sort of dry stuff that needs a little bit of drying, and then kind of stack up behind it. And as that kind of dries, you throw it into the fire, you put a new log on top. You know what I mean? and you can kind of
Yeah.
keep cycling stuff through that way, and it gives you the benefit of the reflector wall or the windbreak or whatever you want to call it. Plus, it's drying out your firewood proactively.
Yeah, and I too use that method of keeping some wood somewhat close to the fire to dry it out. And yeah, I'm equally unsure whether the reflective wall has any advantage other than basically preventing the wind from one direction. Um, but I have seen a few tricks there with the tin foil can actually, reflect a little bit more heat and stuff. That I think does do some good. It definitely does reflect more light towards you. So that's your goal for sure.
And I think that is the big point is they do reflect a little bit more light. And I mean, I've made basic shelters, like the super lean-tos and stuff like that, and I far prefer them with a reflector wall. I don't know if it just feels more cozy and it's all in my head I feel warmer or what the deal is, but I just like it better, in all honesty. The other thing to keep in mind this time of year is this is going to be a good time of year to move into burning a lot of softwood. Softwood, regardless if it's green or dried out, it'll still tend to burn better than its hardwood counterparts. The only real downside to that is you can get some really punky softwoods. It does rot and turn punky faster, and it'll kind of smolder and won't give a whole lot of heat, so you got to keep that in mind. But I mean, if you get fir tree and fir, especially, even wet will burn amazingly. I'm sure
Yeah.
you're aware of this, Ben. Like, I don't need to tell you this, of course, but for anybody out there that needs this, um, spruce, it's okay. I don't find it as good as fir, and I find pine every bit as good as fir, in my opinion. Like, different people, I assume, have different opinions, but that's my working experience.
Well, growing up where I did, hardwood was actually hard to come by, and for most of the winter, we burned a fair bit of spruce, pine, fir, whatever we could get, uh, with this smattering of birch in there, and maybe a few other hardwoods, but that was the majority of what we burned, and it was quite the mix because we would go in and we would cut a small area till we got our 5/6 cord, and my father really didn't care what was ever was in that area is what he was cutting, and we were burning it. So
Well, to be fair, and I've had this talk with a bunch of firewood dealers here. I've done firewood myself. My father was big into firewood. Like you said, the whole hardwood only concept is really very prominent in this neck of the woods. But if you get into PEI and Newfoundland, Labrador, some of the northern places in Canada, stuff like that, it's much like you said. You buy wood. It might be softwood, it might be popple, which is a hardwood, but it burns like a softwood. It might be
yeah,
maple, birch. Like I guess the other word for popple is aspen, trembling aspen or gray aspen or something like that. But anyway, you basically just get wood. That's what you're buying. It's only really here and kind of the inner provinces I find, or like the inners off the country that really stick to this, rock maple and yellow birch
yeah,
mentality.
yeah. Well, I mean, you, in the woods, I find you burn what you have, right? Like whatever you can get that's flammable is really what you burn, and you're not going to go the extra mile to find hardwood when there's plenty of dry softwood available. And the reverse is true too. Really, if you find the neck of the woods you're in has a ton of dead hardwood, you're going to tend to take that dead hardwood over going further distance to get a fair bit of softwood. Um, the big thing is looking for dry stuff. I try to find good standing dead because it tends to be drier than anything that's been sitting on the ground. Um, and generally, it doesn't take long in any wooded area to find quite a bit of standing dead. Um, you only
Mm.
need one or two trees usually to provide more than enough wood to get you through uh, a few hours, anyways. If you're trying to go all night, then you probably want quite a few more.
No, and
But
that's true enough. I mean, myself, I prefer hardwood, only for one or two main reasons. I guess three. I got three big reasons I like hardwood. Um, when hardwood burns, being providing it's dry, you get better coals out of it. It tends to be a little denser wood. It leaves behind longer lasting coals, I guess, more specifically. Not better coals, but longer lasting coals, which I like for cooking on. I tend to find that a good hot fire with hardwood tends to have less smoke. And the last one's crackling and popping and snapping and the sparks and stuff like that. I find tends to be a little less with hardwood. So I try to gravitate towards hardwood, but you're right. If there's no hardwood around and I'm cold, man, I will burn anything I can find that will take a flame and burn. And honestly, this time of year, I stopped getting picky about the hardwood as well. Hardwood is kind of my summer go-to, just because you can usually find it in dry abundance, of course.
Yeah.
And like dead of winter, because then you kind of get a freeze drying action that goes on with a lot of it, and you can once again tend to find a lot of it in somewhat of a dry state. So Bushcraft Nick's asking, how good is black cherry for burning? Now, if black cherry is anything like pin cherry, and this is my own opinion, it's kind of like an elm or an alder. Little hard to get burning, but if you can get it burning, man, the heat that comes out of it is absolutely amazing. Kind of like applewood. Would you not agree? You might know more about black cherry than me.
You say I haven't burned too much apple. I've never had trouble burning cherry. I mean, it wasn't super popular back home. Hemlock, or what we call juniper, was a lot more common. But I did burn the odd bit of cherry because we did find a few dead ones. And yeah, I didn't find it very hard to burn, or it's. I seem to remember it didn't have a bad smell to it either. Uh,
No, I think it has kind of a sweet smell to it, but like I said, my only knowledge of it is it's a little harder to get going, but it burns fine, and I find it burns hot. I can remember when I lived in like further out in the country, Marigamish area, I we had some old alders which had some pin cherry and stuff like that in it, and we were just burning it up in like that odd time of year where you just need a quick fire. And I actually warped the side of the wood stove out with it. That's how hot it burned.
yeah, I know alder will do that pretty quickly.
Well, to be fair, most of this was alder, but it did have some, like I said, pin cherry in there.
Yeah. Alder, there seems to be a lot more alder, at least where I grew up in Newfoundland, and than I see around here routinely. And where it tends to be generally smaller in diameter, like 3 4 inches is a good size alder. It has a lot more surface area too than your average chunkier wood.
Hmm.
And I knew quite a few people who burned it in the cabin because it was the most common, easy to get wood, and they probably had to cut down quite a bit of it just to keep their property clear. Um, yeah, there was quite a few guys with warp stoves because that stuff burned with such intensity. I do seem to think that some of the cherry I found rotted quickly, so if you don't find it in a good stage, it's not going to last as long. Some wood tends to be much more resistant to rot, sort of like your hemlocks and your oaks, very robust woods, where other woods are much more quick to decay and break down.
Now, kind of somewhat on topic, I find it when you're saying hemlock, and I know we've had this conversation before, hemlock and juniper, because hemlock is at least here, hemlock and juniper are two different trees, right?
Yeah, well, I think what any of us call juniper is not a true juniper.
No, it actually has some other. It's a larch or something like that, isn't it?
Japanese larch is the true name for it.
Yeah. So juniper to me was always the softwood with the little tufts of needles. So
Yes.
once again, not a true juniper. It
No.
truly is a larch or something like that, like you said. And a hemlock is kind of almost. And so I can hear eyes rolling now when I say this, but the leaf pattern kind of looks like a cedar where it fans out a little bit, but it's not a cedar. It's needleish. You know what I mean? We have a mill here in Elma that does hemlock exclusively. Makes beautiful rough cut lumber. A buddy of mine built a garage out of it, and that stuff. He gave me all his ends and stuff. Man, it makes great kindling. Like it is super dry, burns super well. It reminds me of like fir is how this stuff burns when it dries a little. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on hemlock. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page with hemlock and juniper, and I know we've had this conversation, and we agreed that it was larch, and hemlock and juniper is kind of a derivative term we use over here on the East Coast or something, isn't it? Where did juniper ever come from?
I I don't know. I mean, there was a ground juniper, which I think is the proper name, that used to grow up in our area, and it had a similar uh, because it's like it's not an evergreen, but it has needles.
Hmm.
Because I do believe that the needles fall off in the fall, which we're so it's a bit of an oddity. It's kind of like a softwood, kind of like a hardwood. It has properties of both. It tends to burn hotter, more like a hardwood, um, but it does have some properties of a softwood. So it's a bit of a weird tree, anyways. But
Just kind of
uh,
a quick glance on Google. I think you're right. Ground juniper, and I have seen those around too. And I think that is the true juniper, much
yeah,
like you said. And I think the one we're talking about is a larch or something like that, of course.
I think it was. And the only reason I remember that is we there was a sale on wood back home, like little tiny seedlings you could plant. You
Hmm.
could buy two or three for $1. I can't remember what it was, but when they were selling it, they were calling it Japanese larch. And when I picked up and looked at it, I'm like, that's what my parents had always told me was a juniper tree, right? But very popular for wharfs and decks and stuff like that because it's very rot resistant, but also
Yeah,
very.
much like its hemlock counterpart. But I know both of those, hemlock and let's call it
Mm,
larch for sake of argument here. Not that we don't have them here in Nova Scotia, but not near as popular as the rest of the woods that we have out here. Like I mean, I cedar would be the only other one that's really hard to find in Nova Scotia. I can only think of like 3 cedar trees that I've ever seen in my life in the
yeah,
wild here. Not that they don't exist, just that I have seen.
yeah.
Same as beech. Beech is another real hard tree to find here in Nova Scotia. But anyway, we kind of digress. If you can find a juniper, it burns very well. Hemlock burns very well as well.
Yeah,
They are part of they burn like softwoods.
yeah.
And like I said, I'd have to look, much like you said, that I can't remember if they're true softwoods or evergreens or if they're kind of in between or what they are. But anyway, they burn much like a softwood because they have a lot of resin built inside them. So that they tend to burn either wet, green, I should say, not wet, but green or dried out. Now, there is a difference between a green wood and a wet wood. Green is literally you cut it off the stump. Wet is like it's been on the ground and it has absorbed even more moisture again. Or at least in my sake of using the terms, it is anyway. I don't know what the official definition is, but that's what I mean when I say wet versus green.
Yeah, so green is something that was recently living is the best way to think about it. And like you said, if it's wet, it's because it's soaked up the moisture. Because it's once it dries, it's kind of like a sponge. If it's sitting in moisture, it's going to suck it up,
Hmm.
and then it sits there in it. And it is a different moisture, and it reacts a little bit different when you're trying to work with it because it is. It's kind of like pulling pulpy wood out of a lake. I don't know how common it is here, but there was a lot of pulpwood in the lakes back home, and you pull that stuff out. I mean, some of that stuff sunk in the water.
Hmm.
It has so much water in it, it actually sinks. Where you think normally wood floats, but and it does. Even green wood floats, but pulpy wood that's been sitting in a lake long enough will actually get heavy enough it'll sink. Um, and takes a long time to dry out. And when it dries out, it's very, very light. It's totally different. Sometimes it's hard to even tell what the original tree stock type was because it gets so transformed in that process.
No, I completely agree with you. I'm thinking I don't know if they still use it or not, but if anybody is from the Barneys River area, there was a pulp mill down there. And right up until at least 6 years ago, they still used a pond for the pulp trucks would come in, you throw all the logs in the pond, and then there was literally like a pole person still pulling each individual log up into the sawmill. It was kind of awesome, you know what I mean? Like old fashioned, each kind of feel to it. I'm gonna have to take a drive down there one of these times. I'm down there every Monday night for fire department. I mean, it's only an
Uh,
extra 25 minutes out of my way. I should just take a drive down and see if that's still there.
yeah,
Uh, but yeah, much anyway. Long story short, I do remember my grandmother used to work the cookhouse down there, and I could always remember the men talking about how much wood would sink.
yeah.
Specifically for that reason, it would take on so much water from being in there, it would sink. So, how does this all tie into our topic about fire tonight? So, in my opinion, better to cut green softwood to burn than have wet softwood to burn, because the green softwood is still going to have a lot of its resins and oils and stuff inside it. That's still, it's going to spark and smoke like a bugger, but it's going to burn.
Yeah.
As where the wet softwood, or even worse, wet hardwood, it's going to be really, really difficult to get that going. It's going to have to pre-dry to some degree. Um, and I mean, there's some stuff there, like it may not even. I'm thinking like when you and I went to the waterfalls, we had some stuff there. We just kept building fire around a couple pieces of it to try and get it to burn, and mostly it just kind of like smoldered away over the course of the 2 days we were there.
Well, as long as there's moisture in it, like in any item, it basically won't burn until that moisture is boiled and steamed off. So you get a hot enough fire, yes, you can burn almost anything, but the reality is, if it's wet enough, it's going to steal so much heat from your fire that it basically won't burn. It'll actually tend to put your fire almost out, um, if it's not good enough. So
True.
dry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying, the drier the better. Obviously, I mean that's
No, 100%. And not to go too far down the science hole on this, but we open up the vast debate, and there is an actual answer to this, but we won't get into that debate tonight. The age old debate: does wood burn? And of course, it's not the wood that burns so much as the rapid oxidization of the fumes that come off the surface that burns. So if you ever burn a piece of wood, like so I was to take this piece of wood and set it on fire, if I looked right between the wood and the flame, there's actually a little clear gap of air. And that's where the heat is actually oxidizing and vaporizing the wood, and it's the fumes that catch on fire. Because there's very few true solids, or even liquids for that matter, that burn. It's usually a vapor that burns. Anyway, going away from the scientific side of that, if you have moisture in there, the steam actually not only will rob the heat, it'll suffocate the fire out.
yeah,
Like we use that a lot in firefighting. If you have a wood stove, and I am not telling anybody this to go out and do it. If you cause damage, it is 100% your fault. We are not held responsible for any liabilities that you could incur from the information I'm about to give. But once upon a time in the fire service, if you caught a flue fire and you had an old wood stove that didn't have any glass or anything in it like that, dunking a piece of newspaper in a bucket of water and throwing it in your stove, the big bellow of steam that would come out would generally put your flue fire out. Now, you'd still have to clean the flue and all of this good stuff. You'd have to check it for cracks, yada, 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 but it would get rid of the immediate danger. There has since been a lot of progression, and there are better methods of doing it, though that is still a valid way of putting out a flue fire in the right circumstances. So, keeping that in mind, that's exactly what it does. Like the steam, it expands and rises so fast, it's, for all intents and purposes, suffocating the fire out. And that's the same thing that's going to happen with your firewood out there in the woods if it's soaked in water. And once again, there's a difference between wet wood and green wood. Hardwood, little less distinguishable, because green hardwood tends to hold a lot of water, not resin. And you kind of get into that wet woodish kind of feel again. But any case, something you can do with wet wood that we mentioned before is perhaps in the center of it, there's still going to be some golden nuggets of dry goodness, and you may have to chip away the outsides of it.
dry good.
Dry goodness. You like that term? I'm coining that. That's mark
Dry
my
good.
words. Someday we'll have a T-shirt with "dry goodness" written on it somewhere, an ABA's logo. But yeah, so that's one of the things you may have to do. So if you are making a fire out there this time of year, you now have to allow a little extra time to, render your firewood down a little bit more. And that's, a lot of people don't allow for that kind of time, especially if they're a little newer to go out into the woods. Maybe they had a great summer. They try to do the same things in the fall and winter, and it ends up causing a little bit of problems.
Yeah, and I think you just hit on the main point that you really have to do is the prep. Is that little extra bit of time breaking that wood down a little bit smaller than you think you necessarily have to is going to guarantee you the best chance of getting a good fire. You always want a lot more kindling and tinder than you think you're going to need, and when you process your wood, process it at least one extra time will generally get you the best chance, I think.
No, I
Okay.
completely agree with you. And yeah, if anybody was at the Bushcraft gathering when we did the bow drill stuff, not only was it hard to get the bow drill going, but the one person that did had a heck of a time getting their bird's nest to catch. They actually didn't get it to catch because it was just a little too small. It ended up burning through it, caused a lot of issues, and it was just because of underestimating the need of tinder, which not only is the need of tinder, but like you said, the kindling, your midwoods, and overall just the amount of wood you need for the run of a night. We mentioned this before. What do you do if you think you have enough firewood? Double it, because generally you're going to go through a probably that amount, if not more, over the course of a night. It seems like you got a ton of firewood, but it's amazing how fast you start going through that.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Um, and it's always something that you'd be way better off having extra wood in the morning than waking up in the morning having burned through every bit of your wood in the middle of the night and wishing you'd had more, because that's the last time. That's not the time you want to be running through the woods trying to find one more tree, one more branch, one more this, or two or three more to get your fire going for the keep the fire going for the night. So yeah, definitely have a bit of extra. Definitely process it a little bit further. Set aside an adequate amount of time for your fire uh, early on so that you are ready when it's time. Uh, and I think that is the thing with a lot of this. Is just making sure you have the prep time set up. Putting that a little bit of time in front is going to save you more than that time later when you need it. Same thing with meals. Everything you can have prepped before you even take your trip saves you trying to do it in the woods. It saves that extra material and stuff to bring in. So, like I oftentimes have steaks and stuff spiced the same thing with my fire. Not that you have it, but you got stuff ready before it's time for the fire. It's ready. You have as much stuff as you can do before. You're gonna. It's less stressful. It's more enjoyable. I think that's the big gist out of that.
No, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. The more you can get ready, the less you'll stress if you're not ready. And just to point out, you've had some comments from the live chat here about you're looking pretty sharp there, Ben. Christopher Loveless just joins us, of course, and he noticed right away. But
I took off the tie. I mean,
yeah, so that's kind of my little stick on fire in the fall, spring, winter, all of that is the main point, and we kind of hammered it on a bunch of different angles. Is be more prepared for it than you would be in the summer because you could potentially be relying on that to keep you warm if something were to happen. If you get wet or something, your lifeline could be that fire. Realize it's going to take more effort. You're going to need more firewood, and dry firewood is going to be harder to find. It's not that it can't be done. Lots of people do it. We do it. You just have to know that going in. Don't expect to run in and get your fire hammered out in an hour and expect to stay the entire night when it's dark at 5:30. And now you're dealing with, like 12, 13, 14 hours of darkness.
yeah. The other thing, though, keep in mind, the more people you have, the less work it is.
That is true. You can the one fire will warm multiple people, but multiple people make the one fire
Yeah.
that much more simple.
Yeah. So when you're camping with a buddy and both you're gathering wood, you get twice as much wood in the same amount of time, but you're still only going to burn a fire about the same size as you would for a solo. Uh, if you got 3, 4 people, the fire tends to get a little bit bigger, but not proportionally in comparison to the number of people you have. And if you have like 20, 30 people, you have a bonfire, but literally you have people pulling trees in left, right, and center. So it all works out.
Generally, the more people you have, the more firewood you acquire. 4 to 5 people, I tend to always have lots of firewood left over in the morning. 1 to 2 people might have an armload left in the morning. Like you're just kind of hitting it right on the right there.
No.
So Christopher Loveless, my biggest issue with firewood in the winter is I can never find the dry stuff. The last few times took me several hours to get wood dried out and a decent fire started. Any advice? And we kind of covered this, Chris, a tiny bit. So you may have to render some of your wood down to get the dry goodness. Huh? See?
Dry goodness. Yeah.
dry goodness out of the center off it. And the other option is to you're gonna have to start looking in places you normally probably pass up. Like look for a lot of evergreens and stuff like that, and you're gonna have to look under that. And your firewood may potentially be smaller now to get the drier stuff, to get the bigger stuff going. Uprooted trees and stuff like that, good spot to look under them as long as it's not full of water or something. And trees that are like dead fallen but not sitting on the ground tend to be a good spot of that. The underside of them will usually be drier. But if it's on the ground this time of year, it's going to sit, it's going to soak up a ton of moisture, it's going to be a nightmare. Can you get them dry and burning? Probably. It's just how much effort do you want to put into that versus maybe put the effort into looking in a few extra places.
Now, um, you call it poplar, I call it trembling aspen, and oak. Always tend to me to have a few good dead limbs hanging. And that's often a great source of dry wood that you can pull off. And spruce always have the lower branches are dead anyways. You can just
Mm-hmm.
snap them off and it's perfectly dry. So those are go-to for getting it going. But for mass, to get a large amount of firewood, you're looking for standing dead. And depending on where you're to, that could be quite a while. And that's why we said earlier, you really have to put the time into that. Make sure you allot time for that. So if you're doing a trip this time of year, you have less sunlight. You're going to burn more wood. So it really does mean you're not traveling as far. You can't, this time of year, I don't recommend a 20-kilometer trek in a single day. I know, in the middle of the summer, I'll say it. Yeah. Even in the spring, because you have more sunlight, you can get those distances. But in the fall, you want to cut back your distances and know that when you get to campsite, you have more camp chores to do because you're going to run it light quicker. You got to get this tent set up. You got to get the fire set up. You got to get all this stuff done because 5:30, 6 o'clock, it's going to be dark enough that you don't want to do any of these things. And this is the time. I mean, the beautiful time of this year is this is the time to sit and chat with your buddies or really enjoy your solitude if that's what you're doing. But yeah, you have more to do in less time, so you definitely want to calculate that into your trip and your adventure.
No, that's completely true. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit there, Christopher. I mean, there's no real good answer to that. It's just you got to get more creative with allowing more time and looking in places that you may not normally look. So yeah, once again, that's kind of my little spiel on fire, and we've had some questions so far. So do you want to jump right into the Amazon thing and try and hammer out the last of the episode? Because we are 40 minutes in. We're coming up on 40 minutes in, and we don't want to draw on too long about this, we don't want to beat it to death, I don't think.
We don't want to complain, but what we want to do is, and we want to throw this out there, is we kind of promised our viewers, our listeners, that we were going to start doing some reviews and stuff on Amazon so they could check it out and get our thoughts there and open up another avenue. So we started that. Robert did an awesome job and got a whole bunch of reviews out in a relatively short period of time. And Amazon more or less feared that we might be biased, which, isn't true. We've never been sponsored by anyone. No one's ever given us anything to review, and anything we've done has been, fully, our money out. That's fair to say, is it not, Robert?
No, 100%. Every single thing that we have gotten between both of us has been bought out of pocket.
Yeah.
Or gifted to us by somebody, like a loved one or something, not by the company or manufacturer.
No. And we've never, really been asked to do reviews. Any reviews we did have always been, our honest opinion, our beliefs with stuff that we bought that we were either happy with or not happy with or whatever. So I guess what we kind of want to just discuss a little bit with you guys, I mean, we will do more amongst ourselves, is what avenue do we want to take? Is our reviews something that people want to hear? Because we do have other avenues, and not the least of which we have our own webpage where we could post reviews and links two products there as one option, or we could do video reviews as many other YouTubers do. I guess we want to get people's feel on this, and any other ideas that you have, Robert, that you might want to throw out to them.
No, but I think it's fair that to say we have our own opinions on all these options as well, and just to be fair and give you guys our opinions on those, just so you know where we're coming from. Like ultimately, whatever you guys want, uh, not to sell ourselves out or anything like that, but all our reviews were meant to try and benefit you out there, our listeners and our viewers and stuff like that. I mean, we know what we think of our products. Once again, all the reviews that we had up, they were honest reviews. If it was a good product, it was a good product. If it wasn't a good product, it wasn't a good product. That's all there was to it. So yeah, like Ben said, we had the reviews up. One of them, our account went under review, and then they ended up deleting all our comments, or sorry, all our reviews and stuff. And we contact them. We're like, hey, what's up? And they're like, well, yeah, the way you're doing your stuff, we have this big fear that you could potentially be getting paid to do reviews. People be giving you products to review, which is against Amazon's terms of service, if anybody's wondering. If or you're giving dishonest reviews, I guess is what all came down to. Anyway, it all came down to skewed reviews. They had this worry that we would start doing skewed reviews with our account, and they basically shut it down. So we now no longer have the ability to comment, post a review, ask a question. Like our account is locked down to the level where we can only purchase stuff, and that's it. Like I even have my reservations if we can contact the seller at this point. They literally like cut us off at the ankles, which is fine. I mean that's Amazon's standpoint. We are not harking on Amazon. It was their choice. We're going into this kind of as noobs or novice, whatever you want to call it. We're kind of learning as we go, and if they don't like it, that's fine. That's cool. We're not saying Amazon is bad. We're not going to buy stuff from Amazon. Nothing like that. It's just if you guys are interested in these reviews, like Ben said, we're gonna have to figure out some other way. And as Ben said, we could either post them on the website, we could do video reviews and stuff like that. But doing video reviews, for one, we don't mind doing them. But it's kind of a saturated market unless it's a specific product. Like if we come up with some really specific products or some really good products or stuff like that, don't mind doing a review at all. We've done it. Ben has one on a One Tiger Smoky Hut. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I have some that I ported over from another.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that, Ben?
It's the it's not Smoky Hut. It's not the Iron Wall. It's the Wildhaven.
Wildhaven, that's exactly what it is. So anyway, we can do video reviews, but we fear that if we start doing video reviews on a lot of the gear we have, it's just going to start slamming these reviews into the channel, which is what you want. If that's what you guys want, no problem. But then we're worried that it'll kind of dilute it a little bit. Now, with the write-ups, we do have our website. We could create a page on there and do our written reviews, much like we did with basically I saved all the reviews from Amazon. When we were putting them up there, we were only allowed 4 a week. And I contacted Amazon about this, and I thought I had it all cleared up before we started, but, it is what it is. Anyway, I have all the written reviews done up with links to where we got them and all that good stuff. And we could very easily port those over to some sort of like right on our website and have a review section for it if that's better off it. We want to know, or anything else you guys are thinking of. What is going to be useful to you folks out there? I guess it's the bottom question, like Ben said, and I just took a long time to reiterate and get back around to it. How do they think about it? But yeah, that's my only concern with doing video reviews. And Ben and I talked about this before we started this episode. Is it going to oversaturate the market, and is it going to take away from our channel? It's going to be really tricky to give you guys high quality reviews in mass. So if we are going to do it video wise, we're probably going to limit it to some of the higher ticket items, would be my opinion. I don't know what your feelings are on there, Ben, but I'm not going to review every like $10 item I buy, which we were doing on Amazon because it was just a quick write up. Or we could do that quick write up and post it to the website. Or I see Christopher over here. He's mentioning, what was it, a Patreon or something like that, which I know nothing about. And you have to realize, guys, we're we're not technically illiterate, but we are very new to what we're doing, and we're kind of learning as we go. We don't have a master plan here at all. Like, our master plan is to get on here, shoot our podcasts, have a little fun, have a few laughs, interact with you guys, and see where the next week takes us. I know, great life plan or great business strategy, but once again, we've never really looked at this as a business. We don't make money, we don't get items, we buy everything out of pocket and relay our experiences on, and that's kind of where we always were from the first. I mean, don't get me wrong, if a company was to approach us and say, hey, do you want to review this, we'd probably consider it, if not do it, but we're not going to be like, oh, hey, we'll give you these items, but only if you give us good reviews and stick to our company only. Chances are we're going to say no to that, because that is giving skewed and biased opinions, and we never really went running down the road of, oh, let's look for companies to give us stuff, because then you kind of get into that realm of, well, and I'm not picking on any one company, but I've mentioned Teton a ton of times on the channel, so I'll pick on them just for this, but only for demonstration purposes. If Teton was like, okay, yeah, we'll give you sleeping bags to review and backpacks and whatever else they sell, which is like tents and all that stuff, but you can only use our products and you can only post reviews if they're good and just forget about the bad ones. Well, we're not going to do that. You know what I mean? So, and not to mention, it would be hard to crank out all those videos. Seeing we have videos, I'm still working on one that Ben shot. When did we do that, Ben? A month ago now? A month and a half ago?
Yeah, yeah, and there's a few issues there. I mean, we have our own. We are busy people, and we do have some technological limitations. We'll put it that way. And that's for both of us. I mean, you're a bit more savvy with some of it than me, but in both regards, we have things that we just don't have the best advantage of. And it was never our point. Like I said, we never want it to be necessarily a business, and we definitely don't want to be owned by somebody. We don't want to have to owe the company anything. But we do want to make people aware of what we think are good products, or what we think is completely useless products, so that people get out there and enjoy it. And that was our whole point. This is the whole point of the whole podcast, is for people to get out there and enjoy it, and know that this doesn't have to be an elite. You don't need to have $10,000 worth of equipment to go out and enjoy it, but that some pieces of equipment are very much worth having. Because they bring good value for what you spend.
Yeah, and
I'm trying to think of the right words.
it's tricky, you know what I mean? Once again, within reason, we'll do what you guys want, and I'm just kind of reading the comments here. That's why I was kind of going through, and everybody's, the general consensus is reviews are good, and people like seeing stuff in use. So it seems like, just preliminarily, based on the couple people that are in our chat right now, is that you like video reviews. But if you like video reviews, Christopher Loveless was, who was it? Christopher Loveless? Cheaper gear, cost effective. Yeah, it's cost effective gear and stuff like that. But so if we're gonna do video reviews, realize that we won't be able to do as many reviews. We'd probably limit them down to, once again, I don't know how to get the words out there that I'm looking for. We limit it down to the items that we think are like stand out in some way, shape, or form, instead of reviewing every little thing. Not that we wouldn't love to review every little thing, but realistically, it's the time, effort, and stuff like that to be thrown into this that really sets us back. And if you want any kind of quality to our videos, I guess is the other side of that. I mean, if you want to see me looking like I just crawled out of a ditch and really, and not that we're professional photographers in any way, shape, or form. If you look at any of our videos, that'll show. But if you want any kind of quality towards our stuff, it's going to slow down a little bit. And then we would have to actually maybe get suggestions from you guys on stuff you would like reviewed. That way we can narrow it down a little bit more. Maybe if you want videos, would it be more useful if we gave you a list of items we had, and then you guys can maybe select some of the things you would like reviewed? Does that kind of make sense to you, Ben, instead of just taking guesses at stuff, maybe find out what people want reviewed that we have available to us. And if it is something that you would really like reviewed and we don't own it, maybe that's something we can work together towards to purchasing and doing a legitimate review on it or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
we need some way of being a little bit more concise if we are going to go the video review route. Did that make any kind of sense, Ben, or am I literally just...
It does. It's the the risk here is if we do start doing reviews that we could get approached by companies and say, do you want to review our titanium stove? Do you want to review our BioLite or whatever device that they're selling that's neat or useful? And because they've kind of been nice to you and they've given you something or even a discount or there's some kind of negotiation there, it does put us in a position where if we don't give it a good review, then we won't get any more. If we do give it a review, like we don't want to be in a position where we compromise our integrity. And not saying that anyone who does it doesn't, because I'm sure most of them have that exact same thing. It's a balance of putting out, and I know I've talked to other YouTubers and have gotten products and they said it's crap. Like, I can't review it. They've told me straight up. They have had things sent up to them and they said, I can't review it. It's just garbage. I have nothing good to say about it. So, but if they get 2 or 3 of those, then the company stops saying, well, you don't review my stuff. And how do you deal with that? It's not necessarily our main goal. I think our main goal is to the podcast. And if we have products that we enjoy, I think it is worth us reviewing or talking about or just showing it on our podcast or in a video. But if people want more of that, we can definitely try to get more videos out there. And maybe we'll highlight good products that we use or just talk about products that we take more often.
And that was the real shame with the Amazon thing, honestly, because it seemed to be our, like, golden goose. We could buy anything we wanted from it, but we only had to review items that particularly spoke to us. If it was a bad product, we could always just kind of glaze over it. That way there's no hurt to the company, no hurt to us, and no hurt to anybody else out there. It was, not that we're giving everything, 5-star reviews and everything is perfect, but if there was really like that, just, how can I give negative stars item, then it never really forced us to have to do anything on that. Like, some of the reviews I'd written up were 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars. If it was like 2 stars and under, I think I had one where it was sitting at about 2 stars. If it was under that, I was really hesitant to even start a write-up on it, because what's the point?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we don't want to get down the road with on video reviews as well. If it's a bad product, why bother reviewing it? But if we do start video reviews, like Ben said, and we get approached, we just don't know how to handle it. I mean, or at least I don't know how to handle it.
The only way I think I'd review a bad product is if it's something out that it seems very popular or it's very similar to a popular product that everyone's raving about, and then we buy it and we find it is completely garbage. And let's say, for example, it's a rip-off version of a saw. So let's say somebody goes out there and makes a copy of the Boreal 21. We both used the Boreal 21. We thought it was a very good saw, Agua cannon. And I've taken this on a lot of trips and I've talked about it a lot. It's a product that we really like. If someone says, Tenton is now making a version of that, we take it out and, it jams up every time you try to push it through the wood. It falls apart constantly. There's all kinds of little issues with it. Then we would tell people, I think, that, like, listen, we tried this product that looked and felt similar, but the quality is just not the same. We definitely, I think, give a bad review on something that we thought people would spend a lot of money on and not get results from. Now, this product does not exist right now, like that we're talking
Example
about.
Product only. We are not harking on Tenton or Teton or whatever you want to call it. I
No.
love their products. If
Yeah.
you're listening, guys, we are not saying anything bad about you. Don't ever think we are.
No.
We're hoping you guys can, take a joke.
But there are products, I'm happen to be playing with a knife here. This little old timer, like the I think it's T240, the carving knife, jackknife. I take this almost every trip. Do I use it every trip? No, because I don't always have the time to do carving. This is a product that I would probably sit down and talk about. Your Teton sleeping bag. You were very pleased with your Teton sleeping bags. You know, some of the tarps we've gotten that we've both used, and we've got tarps from various companies. We're very pleased with the action. You know how they work, the tie-out points and stuff like that. And
Believe
we
it or
don't
not,
want.
that was one of my 3-star reviews. Was my very first tarp there. Great tarp. Wish it had some features.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Um,
but yeah,
anyways, we do enjoy doing some reviews. We just don't want to make it the company or the company the the main point of this channel. And if it gave us the ability to review more products, which is what I think we kind of had a little bit of hope out there, that if we did a few reviews, that maybe we get the opportunity to look at some products that we normally wouldn't. Um, but that is a difficult path because there's a bit of a chicken and the egg. Unless you're doing a lot of reviews, you don't get those opportunities. And if you do get those opportunities, it can sort of take over the channel. And we definitely don't want that to be the main focus.
so, and I'm just reading your comment here, Christopher. You may have to message me some more information on this, because do you know anything about this Patreon thing?
I do.
Okay. Maybe Ben can clarify a little bit more after the channel or after the show. And we get that uh, some people would be comfortable paying a small fee. Once again,
Yeah.
that was never what we were ever about. We don't want people to have to pay for information. We understand that it is possibly an avenue, and if there, I'm not saying we won't do it. I'm just saying when we originally started, we were trying to make as much information publicly available at zero cost, with the most on-skewed, on-biased opinions attached to it. Ben and I were good friends. We do have differences of opinion. Ben likes some things better than I do. I like some things better than Ben does. Sometimes we don't necessarily agree on things, and that's what it was all about. You know what I mean? We wanted a little bit of, not necessarily conflict, but difference of opinion to give different viewpoints. And I think you'll find, we rouse each other a little bit in all our talking and stuff like that. We do agree on a lot of stuff. Don't get me wrong. But we really strive when we don't agree on stuff, because then it's not a debate so much as an open discussion on stuff. I think I'll leave it at that, because it's just going to be repeating the wheel. But so I don't know a lot about Patreon is the bottom of this, but I would hesitate to try and charge for stuff like this. Not that I wouldn't. If that's what people want, no problem. But it wasn't where we originally started off. You know what I mean? We wanted everything to be free and open as much as we could, because there's a lot of people, like a $3 to $5 a month subscription just may not be available to them, that still want to get out there in the woods. You know what? Either they don't have a credit card, or they don't have a PayPal account, or maybe they just don't have the $5 a month to spare. Like, I mean, it is a hard time right now with everything going on and stuff like that. I mean, $5 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it could mean the difference between. I honestly don't know what, but I remember a point in my life where I could not afford $5 a month for a subscription, honestly.
Well, and I would hate to think that $5 is the difference between someone getting the gear they need for a trip and not. You know what I mean? Say $5 just as the number is $60 a year. $60 a year is a decent tarp. It's uh, you know, it's one of those candle lamps that I take and enjoy. There's a lot of things I can get for $60.
I did a review on one of those UCO lamps. It was
Yeah.
one of the ones that was removed. That's a bummer.
Was it 5-star?
It was 4-star.
Wow, you cut a star?
I cut a star simply because there is a little bit of problem, and I did state most of it is user, but wax getting on the globe. If it's
Yes.
left all by its lonesome, it's generally pretty good. Although I did have it, I left it for a few hours and it overflowed and some got on it. Not a big deal. You can clean it.
Oh yeah.
Don't get me wrong. And I said that. It's just, it was 1-star because it was a little bit more maintenance than I originally thought I was getting into.
Okay.
I'm brutally honest, Ben. I've always been brutally honest. Getting a 5-star rating for me is hard.
I have experienced that problem with those lanterns. I do like them though because they last a long time. They're not overly
Oh
expensive,
hell, I would never get rid of mine. Don't get me wrong. I would never get rid of mine.
and more often than not, I'll take one on the trip and I'll just hang it at the end of the hammock. Or, in fact, when we were in Keji, my buddy Chris, he actually stuck one inside the outhouse, so when you went up, there was enough light to do your business most of the night.
Hmm. Uh, yeah, and once again, Chris, I hear what you're saying. We are giving our time. And like I said, it was never about us giving our time. Both Ben and I, at some aspect in our lives, are trainers. We enjoy talking, we enjoy teaching people. We probably like hearing each other speak on some level there, don't get me wrong. But I mean, we were never worried about the time aspect, to be honest with you. It's fourth, fifth live stream. Yeah, I know you've been here for a while there, Chris. That's why we poke at you a lot. Uh, to be fair, there's some regulars we always poke at on the channel for anybody listening out there. But anyway, um, not to run ourselves in circles, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Let us know. If you go to our website, which is where are we at? Down there, atlanticbushcraft.ca, scroll all the way to the bottom of the page. There is a little picture of a email, and maybe, just maybe, I can bring this up for this. Just maybe, to be perfectly honest, because I don't know where anything is right now. But anyway, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the webpage, there is a thing that looks like a letter or an envelope. If you click on that, it opens a contact us form. You can type in your comments there and send them directly to us. That way you don't have to, open an email program or any of that if you're on your phone or something like that. Yeah, it's a contact form there, Chris. I'm just trying to actually bring it up. Is that gonna work? Nope. Yeah. See, I am truly not so good at this. For whatever reason. Let's try it this way. Anyway, what do you think there, Ben? Like, close note because I'm kind of rambling because I'm trying to do something in the background here as well.
I don't know. I think we said our piece on that, and we'd love to hear the feedback. I think we will always do some degree of product review or talking about different products. We do have
Yeah, there it is.
our gear of the month thing that we do. Oh, look at that beautiful picture.
Right. That's your goodness right there, Ben. Anyway, yeah, if you see at the
I think
bottom
that's
right there.
right there.
What's that?
I think that's a Teton sleeping bag right there, buddy.
It could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's your picture. I wasn't
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
in the bottom corner or the bottom of the screen there, you see our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the contact us form, which if you click, will fire up a contact us form, and that way you can do everything through that. It was what I was trying to allude to from all that rambling anyway.
That's a homemade stove too, buddy.
I know, like I said, that's why I wanted to use that picture. And if anybody hasn't seen our website yet, oh, here, I should really screw this up. This should be good. Is that going to do it? That is going to do it. How do I
And
switch?
the pot that was on it, I think the last time we did a review, that wasn't available. Last I checked, it was back on. Oh, there's a good looking fella. And there's a guy sitting on a stump too.
So there's the website for anybody that's wondering. You can link to all our major listening channels there, our YouTube channel. It has some pictures of some of our adventures. I am going to add more into that eventually. And for anybody that's wondering, if you click on any of these sections here, like the how-tos, the DIY tutorials, how-tos, and more, I'm trying to read them through a secondary screen, so excuse me for a second. Trips, and I think the last one's gear reviews. If you click on any one of those sections, it will bring you to the YouTube playlist for... Oh, no, that's not what I want. This is what I want. It will bring you to that YouTube playlist for that section. There we go. We're back. But anyway, yeah. So let us know your thoughts. How do you want us to proceed with reviews? Is it something you're interested in? Is it something you're not interested in? If you are interested in it, how do you want us to go about it? Would you rather write-ups, which will give us the availability to review more things, because it is simpler in, just the time and stuff to sit down, hammer out something, well, potentially like me, I sometimes do it at my lunch hour at work. maybe in the mornings, something like that. I can usually type up a quick review. Or would you prefer a video one, which is going to be a little bit more in depth, take a little bit more time, probably a little slower coming out? Or is there something else you guys can think of that perhaps you would like us to do? And we're totally open to that.
So we are contemplating, just to throw out there, doing articles that we could post on our website too. This is nothing we were committed to yet. One of the ideas was to like the reviews in there, but we may actually do like little write-ups on certain subjects and stuff. So that's something else that may or may not materialize. But that was something there. And is our storefront available through there?
The storefront's available. I need to link it to the website. I just haven't linked it to the website yet because we don't actually have anything on the storefront available as of yet. So we have a storefront. It's just unpopulated. Well, it's populated with a bunch of stuff we're not actually offering.
Yeah, so we do have the potential to make some products with the ABA logo and stuff like that. We do stick the ABA logo on some of our own personal stuff. So if you're ever going through Nova Scotia and you see ABA in the back of a vehicle, good chance it's one of us.
Pretty much.
Or somebody who knows us and has gotten this sticker. We also have some projects on to go. I'm rebuilding a canoe right now, so there may be some talk about that. I got a yoke that I've mostly produced. I don't even think you've seen much on that yet.
Nope, just the outside painting. But yeah. So we're at the 1 hour mark. We're actually at an hour and 6 minutes. That's the thoughts. So you guys let us know what you want, and as always, we'll see you next week. Hopefully with another great topic that you guys are interested in. That's what we always strive for. If you have suggestions for topics or other things, once again, you can it's always backwards. You can use the atlanticbushcraft.ca, go all the way to the bottom, use the contact form. You can email us at podcast@atlanticbushcraft.ca. Stop there for a second. Or you can contact us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and whatever else we may be on at this point. I've lost count. But if there's a social media out there, there's a good chance if you search for Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures, you're going to find us. We tried to make an effort to be on everything that was at least somewhat popular and above. All right. Is anything else you want to add into that?
No, there's faces crawling into my screen. So.
I see that, but oh well. Have a good night, everybody. Oh, where's she going? Oh, she's running away. You scared her.
Scared her.
You scared her, Ben. You're a big meanie.
I am a bully. Yeah. And there's not like I always get out there, have fun. I definitely have some plans to get out in the next few weeks. So I'm hoping to get out, and there maybe there'll be at least if not a video, at least some photos and stuff coming out of that'll show up on our pages. So.
Sounds good. And I'm getting out a little bit. It is hunting season. I do like to go bird hunting, deer hunting, and a few other things. May not always bring bullets or arrows, but at least it's a good walk in the woods. So There may be pictures to come. Instagram may finally be getting an update.
Awesome.
Good night, everyone.
Night all.